She's over there. I'm really excited to talk to you tonight about a new way of thinking, about a new kind of science. And it's easy to say, but it's hard to apply. And I think it's hard to understand. And so I want to share some studies that have been done with you tonight that help us to get an understanding of the importance that each of us play in each other's lives. The kind of hidden importance that we didn't even know that we had. Impacts that we didn't even know that we had on other people. The phrase is simple. It's this. It's that moods are shared. Now, let's begin with shared. When we understand what shared means, we'll have a new and radical change in the way we think about mindfulness. Right? So shared in this case means relationships. Now we all think we know what relationships are. We all think we know what relationships do for us, right? Relationships are a way for us to receive social support, and they're a way for us to have some fun, and they're a way for us to be protected from loneliness. But relationships do a lot more. They do things for us that are far more subtle. They actually orient and create the kind of world that we live in. So let me give you an example. You set up this study, you invite somebody into a room, the other person in the room, you have somebody else in the room, they're working with you, and they act anxious, they're uncomfortable, right? Bring somebody else into that room, they start to act anxious and uncomfortable. That's not necessarily what's so interesting. What's interesting is that if you ask them about it later, they can identify that they felt anxious, but they can't tell you why. They can't tell you that it's because the other person in the room was also anxious. So I'll give you another one. Social space, the way we orient ourselves in social space, is something that we learn, but it's not taught to us. So for example, if I work my way towards somebody, I get a little bit closer, a little bit closer, a little bit closer. That's pretty close. There's a level of discomfort there, right? But nobody ever sat down and said, I know your name's not Susie, but I just like the name Susie, so I'm going to throw that into my example. Nobody ever sat down and said, Susie, if somebody ever comes within 7.5 inches of you, that's when you're really supposed to start feeling uncomfortable. We never learn that. Nobody ever sits down and tells us that. Because the way we organize social space, it isn't a cognitive process. It's in the background, right? It's a background way of being. Let me give you a final one. I think this one's kind of interesting. Attractiveness. You would think that attractiveness, the preferences that we have for whether somebody's attractive or not, are determined by us, right? We sort of decide that our preferences, these are the things that we like in other people. But you bring somebody in and have them look at 120 faces and have them rate on the screen how attractive they think they are, say on a scale from 1 to 7. Doesn't matter what the scale is. Every time they provide a rating, you just randomly generate what they believe is the average peer rating for attractiveness in that picture. Right? So they put in 5, they see a 7. They put in 7, they see a 5. They put in 3, they see a 5, etc. 120 pictures, this goes on. Break it up. They wait 30 minutes. You have them come back in, and they rate the pictures again. And in each case, their rating will move closer towards the average. But if you ask them if they're aware of the fact that they're moving it closer towards the average, they'll deny it. And what's even more interesting is, you might say to yourself, well, Derrick, geez, maybe they're just gaming the system, right? They remember what the average rating is, and so there's demand characteristics, all this sort of stuff, and putting in the number they think you want. But if you have them do this in an fMRI machine, you actually see changes in the way that their brain is activated, right? You can't fake that. You can't fake the way that your brain is activated. So, what's the point of all of this? The point is that we're constantly and always swimming in these kinds of social fields. And these social fields are exerting effects on us that we're unaware of. What's the connection to mindfulness, right? The TEDx conference is going to be on mindfulness. I think a mistake that we make is that we assume that mindfulness is this individual practice that we do in our room where it's quiet, and that's it. And a lot of the research bears that out. Most research looks at individual well-being and how mindfulness relates to that. But I think if we take this new way of thinking, this new kind of science, and we connect it to mindfulness practice, a whole new world of opportunities opens up. Because if the anxiety and the busyness and the competitiveness and the defeatism of the world is contagious, then so could be the calmness, the contentedness, peace that we have through mindfulness. And we don't have to say anything to anyone else. We just have to be in the world in that way. And it'll rub off on other people. Now, one last thing. Final thought. You might be asking yourself, okay, well, what determines whether you pick up my anxiety or whether I pick up your contentedness and your calmness? What determines how the contagion goes? It's an important question, interesting question. And if you vote me through to TEDx,